Hi everyone, I'm Miranda and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I've invited my mum Donna to join me because today we're talking all about book collecting. So many of you asked me about my personal library, I think it's fair to say,
yes.
and how to collect both new and vintage books. So let's dive straight in with the questions because there's a lot to get through.
Yeah.
So we'll get going.
Yeah.
So someone said it seems so daunting, book collecting. Did you begin by chance or plan? What books do you collect? How many books do you own? How do you keep track of them? We both began book collecting as children.
Yes, very young.
I started about age 9 when I read the Chalet School books by Eleanor Brent Dyer. I absolutely loved these books, and my grandmother in the UK would send them to me, and I just got completely obsessed with the world. They're boarding school books set in Austria and Switzerland and the UK, and I had quite an international background, so I just fell in love with them. But the modern paperbacks that came out in those days were abridged, and I wanted to read the unabridged editions. So I started collecting the old vintage hardbacks way back then, and I still have most of them, which is really lovely.
Yes.
And how about you? How did you start?
I started in those days I was given pocket money, and I would save it up for jumble sales and for church sales, you know, where you go to the book table, and was very lucky. I started with things like Ladybird books. I loved Ladybird books. I still do. Just gorgeous little books like that, and things like school stories. In fact, you know, that was also a passion of mine, and I started with those. The classics I love to collect. So again, very young, and it just rolled on from there.
And book collecting actually makes a big part of our relationship. It was a very bonding thing when I was little, because you helped me with collecting these books and reading them with me, which was lovely. And we even sold a few books on eBay way back in the day,
before you
when it first started. And we did that to fund our own book collecting. So that was something we really shared, and an interest that kind of grew together.
It was wonderful. It still is.
It still is. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And then in terms of my personal library, how many books I have, I don't count how many books I have. I really have too many to count, and I'm not interested in numbers in that way. I know what books I have, but I don't keep a list of them, and that's just not what I do. I know lots of people do, but I don't. And someone has asked, what's the oldest book in your collection? And what are some of the most special books? Well, the oldest book is also one of the most special books in my collection, which is handy. That's The Daisy Chain by Charlotte M. Young. And the date in this, it's not a first, it's a reprint, but the date is 1889. And why this is so special is because it is signed by Dorothy L. Sayers, who wrote the Lord Peter Wimsey mysteries. You can see,
one of your very favourite.
She's one of my very favourite writers. You know, I love Golden Age crime, and I love the Dorothy L. Sayers books. And this little book plate in it says, from the library of Dorothy L. Sayers, sold at Sotheby's, London, December 2000. You found this book for me, bought it, not from Sotheby's.
No, on ABE. I found it on ABE and leapt on it.
And we can see we paid £40 for it, which is at the higher end of what we pay for a book. But how special to have something signed by Dorothy L. Sayers.
And Charlotte Young, who we both really like.
Yes, I really want to reread The Daisy Chain. It's been years. I remember loving it. And I do like Charlotte M. Young. So that book is really special. What's the best way to collect books? Where should I start? Well, this is really fun. I love talking about building your own personal book collection, your own personal library. And I think so much of it is down to your tastes, obviously. And it's also about your personal interests, your hobbies.
Definitely.
even it can be anything really. Your ancestry might inspire you to collect a particular type of book.
Scottish, for instance,
yes,
or something like that.
Loving gardening might inspire you to collect gardening books.
Even books you had as a child that have gone from your collection that you think, actually, I'd love to have those again. You know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It should be personal, though. You shouldn't collect something because you feel you ought to.
No, exactly. I think book collecting should always be for pleasure. You don't have to feel guilty about it. If you want to collect Mills and Boon books, go ahead and do that.
No judgment here.
There's absolutely no judgment. There shouldn't be any judgment. It should just be a joy to you. Yeah. And it can be something silly. It could be something serious. Yeah. It could be that there's one book that you just absolutely adore. Yeah. And this one book means so much to you that you want to collect particular beautiful editions of that book.
Or
and that's
even
your real
every
interest.
edition. Some people are that obsessed
yes,
with
that's
some
true.
things, you know.
Yes, like Alice in Wonderland collectors can be like that. And it doesn't matter. It's your thing. You get to decide what you collect and why. And you're the only person that matters with this. And just take a lot of pleasure in it. Yeah. We love books. Our collection has been so pleasurable to us. We've also met other like-minded people through collecting
books. You often do. You discover you're not the only one.
You do, exactly. And that's so fun. So I would say just have a think. If you are feeling overwhelmed, don't, because it's really a personal thing. Just think about what kind of collector you want to be. Do you want to collect books around your interests like cooking or travel or gardening or whatever? Or do you want to collect a favourite author or authors? Or do you want to collect just one title? Or do you want to collect a specific genre?
Yes.
Think about what matters to you. We're real genre and author collectors.
We are.
We mainly collect our favourite writers, and we're both particularly interested in vintage children's fiction, vintage generally, and vintage children's books
and classics too.
And classics, yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the enjoyment is just deciding what you want to collect, and that's all down to you.
Yeah. And you can also tweak it, which is fun.
You also have to think about why are you collecting.
Yeah.
Some people do collect just as an investment.
Yes,
which we obviously don't do. Yes, and I mean, that's getting into tricky territory because, like anything,
we couldn't
it's really
advise
hard.
you on that.
We can't advise on that. No. So that's a different type of collector. And some people also do just want to collect really valuable books, like first editions of Winnie the Pooh or Alice in Wonderland.
If you're lucky enough to be able to do that, that's fine.
That is fine. But that's a different type of collecting that will take serious investment. Yeah. But if you want to do that, then by all means do that. And some people also collect with maybe a grandchild in mind. Yes. They want to give them a library when they reach a certain age and have it full of amazing books and to also have some value. That's a wonderful thing to do if you want to do it. And that's a nice example of sometimes you collect for someone else and not just for yourself.
Yes.
So there's lots of different types of collecting, but we can only speak to collecting for personal pleasure
and to be honest, we do it for fun as well as pleasure. It's fun and pleasure for us.
So I mean, there have been occasions when I've had to sell some of my books. When I downsized in London, I sold some of my collection partly to fund my move. And also because I didn't have room in my new flat. Sometimes you have to let go of books and to sell them. Yeah. And that's just part of life.
It is.
What I would say is don't just leap on a trend. Don't just think because Miranda collects a certain type of book or author, I'm going to go out and buy all of these books, even if I don't really know them. Yeah. Read one book from an author before you go and collect a whole series.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
It is. And nowadays you've got the Internet Archive where you can find a lot. You've got Kindle editions. It's a lot easier to try out a book before you start thinking, oh, I'm going to put some money and try and find that.
Exactly. And I would really recommend doing that, because my taste is my taste. It might not be everybody's. So I would also say you have to take some responsibility for your own collecting and discover what suits you. Yeah. Next question, I think. I love books but don't want my house to become cluttered. What's your advice for small collections? Well, that's a great question because, yes, space is an issue. Yes. And I think nowadays we are very lucky. There's so many books that you can get as ebooks. You can get them from the library. You can get audio books, not as physical ones, but just streaming on your phone now, which is so great. So I'd say if space is really limited, do use your library. Do use an e-reader. Do use audiobooks if you like audiobooks. You don't have to own every single book. No. You can also pick up a lot of books secondhand in charity shops or thrift shops, and then don't feel bad about redonating
Exactly. Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
You don't have to hang on to every single book. If you're not spending a lot of money to begin with, then you don't need to feel bad about sort of passing them on and donating them back. Yeah. But I think, again, if you want to have some personal library, even if it's a small one, then think about some of the books that you've enjoyed the most, maybe over the past 10 years or so. Yeah. Books that you've loved from your childhood that you feel really made you who you are. Yeah. And think about getting really nice editions, the nicest that you can afford or that are available. Yeah. And creating a beautiful curated library in that way.
That's brilliant advice.
I think it should mean something to you. I know people sometimes collect books just as
colours.
Decorate, sort of by colour and things. If you want to do that, go ahead. Yeah, of course. For me personally, I think you get so much pleasure out of a library that means something to you.
And that you want to reread.
Yes. Yeah. Think of books that you want to read over and over again, and make sure that those books are on your shelves. And we don't have every book that we love. At all. I love Agatha Christie. I have a handful of her books because I don't have room for all of them. No. I listen to them mainly, or I get them from the library, or I'll pick them up cheaply and then redonate them. Yeah. So same with P.G. Wodehouse. I love his books. I only own like less than 5 physical copies.
Yeah, and yet you've read so many.
I've read basically all of them.
Yes. Yes.
But I don't hang on to them because, one thing, they're so easy to get, but it's just you've got to draw a line sometimes and think those are too many
I've done that with Patricia Wentworth. Over the years, I buy them and then it gets like, oh my goodness, there's so many of them, and they go and then
I used to have all the Georgette Hare books. A few years ago I had to get rid of them because of space. I am picking them up again now in secondhand mainly. Yeah. But I've read them all. I can always listen to them or read them on Kindle, so it doesn't really matter. But if you want to just have a small library, make sure it's personal. Make sure it means something to you. Make sure those are books that you really love, that make you happy to see them on your shelf. That would really be my recommendation. Storage tips if space is an issue, and should I use bookcases or fitted shelving? If you have the budget to have fitted shelving, I think that's amazing. I would do that. Yeah. I've always lived in rented property in my adult life, so I've never had that option. Yeah. If I had that option, I'd be over the moon. You could fit so many more books.
Yes, you have them above
I want one of those. I want one of those homes where the books are all above the doors and just all over every wall. I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, I have to have bookcases. Yeah. But with this move, we really did have some bookcases built a bit for the space. Yeah. And bookcases are very expensive. Yeah. So I've only ever had IKEA bookcases, or for here we got some made for us, but we got that done really reasonably. Yes. And by tricks like having a wardrobe converted into a bookcase. they basically got this wardrobe for free, and we
Yeah.
just paid for the hours it took to make it into a bookcase, which wasn't that many because the guy's very clever.
Yeah.
So I would say buy the best sort of bookcases you can afford. Look for them secondhand. You get much better quality ones. They're sturdier.
Yeah.
You know, the IKEA ones that we all buy.
Yeah.
They're great because they are inexpensive, but they're quite flimsy.
Especially when you're double stacking and piling them, which we do.
We have done that, of course, in the past. Storage issues. I mean, I have stored books under my bed, in the sort of drawers under my bed. I've stored them in boxes in cupboards.
Yeah.
I have double stacked. I've turned them on their sides
your dad is still storing your childhood books.
Yes.
So,
that's always an issue that we all face.
Yeah.
So
do the best you can.
Yes. I think that sums that up. And should you start building a personal library with a number in mind or increase it organically? I think you should increase it organically.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Do you put book plates in your books?
Oh, no.
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 So that's a funny one because I think, like I said, we used to sell a few books on eBay, and you become aware that things like a book plate will devalue a book often. Yeah. Now, I actually really like that. Yeah, it's so famous. Make sure you do. But
I actually find them charming.
I know that's what's a funny one. I love getting the vintage book plates in old books. I find them fascinating. All these ones that were given as like Sunday school prizes and stuff. I find them really fascinating. But in general, it will devalue a book. So I don't like doing it myself.
I've never felt the urge to sort of mark my own books like that.
When I was little, I did write my name.
Yes, you did.
But I would never do that now.
No, but that was fine. You were little. You were allowed.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that really is down to your personal.
Yeah, and I think books have come and gone from our library too. So we now have the sense that we might not own these forever as much as we want to. So we can allow it to be more neutral than having.
I think that's very fair to say. What are the top 100 books that should be in everyone's library?
Whoa.
Well, I think that isn't for me to say.
No.
And no one has to have a certain titles or whatever. There are a lot of resources online. If you look up 100 books everyone should have read, then you can find that type of thing. But like I said, here it's like no judgment. It's down to what you want to read, and it's your personal library. You get to collect whatever book you want.
There are books that I believe it would be lovely if everybody got to read them.
Yeah,
obviously.
But this is our
your
personal
library.
taste and our opinions.
Yeah,
and books are subjective things.
They are.
So I think that's down to you. I had lots of questions on how to buy vintage books. So where is the best place to look for vintage books, particularly children's books, and what are some trusted online sellers for vintage books? There's sum up basically all the questions. So charity shops, thrift stores, you can definitely find good books at very reasonable prices there. So pop into those all the time. Yeah. Same with library sales. Library sales are a wonderful place to find rarer books or just secondhand books. Car boot sales.
Yes, definitely.
Also very good. Yeah. Vintage book fairs. As soon as you get more specialist sellers,
of course,
the price will go up. Yeah. So you just have to be aware of that. And this is why it's also really important to do your research. Yes. You should know what the kind of going rate on a book is.
Yes, so you know if it's a bargain.
Yeah, then you'll know if it's a bargain, or you'll know if it's overpriced.
Yeah.
Or you'll know if it's reasonable.
Yes. Most things end up being reasonable when you're in book fairs, because after all, they want people to buy the books. So
they do.
But you should still know.
Yes, you should know, and you should take that upon yourself to look up books. ABE is a brilliant resource.
Yeah.
For buying books secondhand, we use that a lot.
Yeah, eBay, of course, and Etsy both have books on.
Yes.
They're a bit more hit and miss, and sometimes people don't know how to describe them on.
Yes, because they're more individual people selling on those than necessarily professional booksellers. In terms of children's vintage books, then ABE is what we use a lot. Yeah. But also I do have some dealers who I would personally recommend, who I really like and trust, and I will list them in the description box down below. Yeah. On the Girls Gone By website, they have a section on dealers, and a lot of the people that I know and trust are on that page. Yeah. So I will link to that too. Also, if you're collecting, for instance, a particular author, if you join societies or Facebook groups or things like that with other fans, a lot of fans sell to fans. Yes. So they'll list books on the Facebook page or something like that. That's one of the best ways to buy books like that. So there are lots of different ways, but I would say look around, look on ABE, look at what prices are going so you know what is reasonable.
That's really good advice.
And you have to take into account the condition of a book, of course, too. Yeah. And if it matters to you to only have the first edition, that's going to be more expensive. Or if it has to have a dust wrapper, that's going to be more expensive. Yeah. So you just have to think, do I just really want a reading copy? Exactly. Do I just really want to read this book? Yeah. Or do I want it to look a certain way? Because that affects things as well. Is there a hard to find book on your wish list that you're always looking out for? There are lots. There are too many. Yeah. Do you have a maximum amount you would spend on a vintage book?
Well, that's interesting because for special birthdays for you and to celebrate things, I've spent more money obviously on some things than on others. Generally, I try to be reasonable. Obviously, you can't afford to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds ever. But
no, we hardly ever go to £100.
No,
even that's like a really special book.
Yeah,
but sometimes you can think, well, are you going to go out and have a really fancy meal?
Yes.
Or are you going to buy a book that you've been wanting for years?
So, exactly. You can weigh things up. Yeah. And again, it's a personal decision. Nobody should be judged if they spend a lot of money on a book. If that's what they want.
Exactly.
And that's their choice.
We do generally look for bargains because we do have a budget, even though I spend most of my money on books. We still have a budget for what we can spend. So we have, there are books I could buy if I had the money to, but, have to just keep looking out for when the bargains come up. But that can be part of the fun too.
Definitely.
Do you like to complete book sets even if they don't include a book you don't like? Well, we are completists to a certain extent, but not entirely. So, for instance, I love Persephone books, but I don't own every Persephone book because I'm not interested in all of them. So I wouldn't buy every one. Some that I haven't enjoyed so much, I've also not kept.
Yeah.
However, with Girls Gone By, for instance, I am a completist, yes. So I do have almost every title that they've ever published. I've just got a very few left. So, and I will collect them all. So it depends. It really depends. If it's a favourite author, then I will try and get all of their books, even if some are weaker than others.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How do you feel about multiple editions of favourites? What are your favourite editions to collect? I think if you want to collect multiple editions, that's your call and that's fine by me. Yeah. I collect multiple editions of Jane Austen's books, some of the classics especially.
Brontes, you do.
Yes, the Brontes and Jane Austen, and then some of the classic children's books.
Yeah.
And I judge that a lot by just the beauty of the edition. Exactly. So it really depends. Do you like to keep reading copies of especially old, fragile, special books? Yes, I do.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had lots of questions on culling books. What do you do when you run out of room for more books? Do you keep books even if you haven't enjoyed them, or if they were given as gifts? I had just so many questions on culling, which I think is funny because yes, like if I really don't like a book, then I
doesn't
won't
deserve a place in our
keep
library.
it. Yes. However, I also do work a lot with books, so there's a reason I have a lot of books.
Yeah.
And even if some maybe aren't favourites of mine, but I think they're interesting on a particular topic, and I think I might want to reference it at some point, then I will keep it for that reason. And sometimes I like to buy Kindle editions for that reason, because you can search them so easily.
Yes, that's very
which
true.
is really handy. But I don't feel any shame or guilt in getting rid of a book if it was a gift and I didn't like it. I think that's fine. I never give books feeling like the person has to keep it,
no, of
even
course
if they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I don't have any guilt about having unread books on my shelves, books I haven't read yet.
Not at all.
No, that doesn't bother me at all. I read a lot. I'm interested in a lot of books. We both read a lot.
Yeah.
We fully intend to get through all the books at some point, but it doesn't bother me having a huge number of books to be read.
No, I mean, that's just, I can't imagine having read all my books. That would be...
No.
You know,
I think I'd feel panicked.
Yes, so would I.
I like feeling I've got a lot of books I want to read.
Yeah.
And I love going to my shelves and choosing new books. Yeah. So that doesn't bother me. When I do get rid of books, I either give them to friends if I think it's a book that they'll like, or I donate them.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Don't sell books.
We don't sell books. No.
And I can't imagine us doing that really at any point. So yes.
Cull away.
As
you wish.
Yes. If you want to cull, then definitely cull.
Yeah.
Have you ever regretted letting a book go? Yes.
Oh yes.
And this is why I really will think hard before I cull a book, unless I just really didn't like it.
Yeah. And
that's because I do regret books that I've given away a lot. And sometimes I've had to sell books, occasionally in the past. Like I said, for that move, I needed to sell some of my
very treasured books.
Books.
Yeah.
I mean, that was unusual. That's happened once in my life.
Yes.
But sometimes you never know what's going to happen, and you do have to let books go, and then you can't really regret it because it's just a life thing.
It is. That's right.
Or if you have to downsize and you just have to make tough choices.
You think there are periods in your life too where you do, if you're older and you're going down into a very small apartment or something, then of course you can't keep everything.
No.
So I think you be philosophical about things.
Yes.
In the end, they're not people; they're just books.
Yes.
You've had your enjoyment. You've got your enjoyment of the ones you keep.
Yes.
But you can let things go.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. But yes, I mean, I also do regret often books I've let go. Yes. So I'm a bit more prone to cull than you are. You really don't like getting rid of books.
No.
And you'll say to me, no, remember you gave that book away and then really regretted it. So,
I do try. Yes.
Do you arrange by publisher or alphabetical order? Do you separate read and to be read? I don't separate read and to be read. And
publishers, we do keep the Persephone together.
I think we probably do organise mainly by publisher and a bit by genre.
Yeah.
So we keep all our Persephones together, all our Girls Gone By together. And then certain sets I tend to keep together. So I think that's probably the main way. But space is an issue, how books will fit into certain shelves and it's always a bit tricky. But mainly genre and publisher. What are your go-to editions and publishers, the ones you simply can't resist? Well, that's particularly, I think, for new books and some vintage. I mean, folio books are lovely. I have some of them. I tend to get these secondhand.
Yes.
If I see them secondhand, then I'll get them. And it's nice to sometimes have a special book in a folio edition. But it wouldn't be fair to say those are my go-to.
No.
In terms of publishers, I do like falling over. I do like Faber. They reissue some sort of older books quite often, like The Feast, and they do lovely editions.
Yeah.
Same with Virago. Like, I love the Virago Modern Classics editions. The hardback ones as well. I really love, and I will collect those.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned Persephone. I love. British crime classics. Again, I pick these up in charity shops a lot. So if I see them in a charity shop, I'll get them.
Yeah. I think they're, as a series, they're getting even more interesting to me, actually.
Yeah,
I really enjoy them.
Little Toller, they
Beautiful
do a lot of
books.
nature
And
writing.
Dorset.
And they're a Dorset publisher. They're really lovely.
Yeah.
Slightly Foxed, I love.
Yeah.
Of course, I love Girls Gone By.
Yeah.
And Dean Street Press. I'm going through these very quickly because we don't have much time. Penguin English Library, the paperbacks and hardbacks for classic books.
Yes,
I love.
Lovely.
Another publisher of children's books is Fidra.
Sadly no longer.
But they did a lot, a bit like Girls Gone By, and I have a lot of those.
Yeah.
And yes, Virago for like the Angela Thirkell.
Absolutely.
Things like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that mainly covers it. Best bookshops that sell online, especially for those who live abroad. Well, there's a reason I linked to Blackwell's.
Yes, I bought from Blackwell's for years and years when I lived abroad. So I have
you actually had to send letters.
I did. Yes.
I love that. I love that you wrote letters to Blackwell's. It's like 84 Charing Cross Road almost. So we've for years bought books from Blackwell's. From living abroad too. They send abroad, they ship internationally, and I love their Oxford bookshop too.
Yes, it's beautiful.
So that one's really good. I also link to them because they tend to stock a lot of different editions. Like they're one of the very best in terms of having lots of different things.
Yeah.
How do you keep expenses at a reasonable level? How to choose between different editions?
Research, really.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like I said, you need to do your research and know what is reasonable.
Yeah, and I mean too, when you're sort of looking, if you look in the secondhand, often in charity shops, you're never going to pay a lot for a book.
Yes, and I would say even if you're buying mainly new books, but you have a book budget, still think about secondhand. You can get really good editions on ABE, for instance, of even. I don't know, you can look for Persephone books secondhand. You can look for lots of different types of books secondhand. You can look for new hardbacks, new paperbacks, and check the secondhand market first. And often get, a copy that's still in good shape, but is cheaper. So I would always recommend that. How do you keep aging books pristine? How do you clean your books? So
that's your
I'm
job.
a very careful reader for one thing.
Yeah.
And
I mean we do things like wash our hands. We do that before we handle books.
Yes, and I be very careful with drink and food around books.
Yes.
Some things you just can't you fight against. They will get yellowed pages, they will get brown, unless you keep like everything in glass, bookcases, which most people can't do.
No.
Give them a bit of a dust, make sure they are on a bookcase. That's what helps keep books not dusty.
Yeah.
And I would say a lot of people do put the clear plastic wrap around books. Sometimes I've found that actually damages books more, especially if it hasn't been applied properly to the dust wrapper. It can then crinkle the dust wrapper, or if a book gets a bit humid and moist, then it can crinkle the cover. So I would say also check on your books regularly. Make sure that they're okay. Make sure there's not damp anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, that's what I do.
Yes.
I tend to take off the clear plastic wraps actually, and I'm just very careful with my books.
But of course, we don't have pets, and we don't have young
We don't have
children.
pets, we don't have children, so you know, we can be.
Yeah.
It's easier for us, I think. But also, old books are old books, and they are fragile.
Yeah. You can't beat yourself up too if you get a little tear on a dust wrapper or something. I mean, that's the way it is. I'd rather read a book in the end than not read it because I'm too scared of it.
I often will maybe take a dust wrapper off.
Oh, yes.
And I won't like carry
Don't
around
just
in my
shove
handbag.
it in your handbag.
Yes, things like that. You know, just,
that's what
careful.
Kindles are for, really. I think, you know, for that sort of thing. Yeah.
But anyway, those are the questions we had time for. Thank you so much for sending them in. I hope you'll find this useful. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description box to some of my favourite secondhand sellers and to Blackwell's, which you can check out. So just have a look at all those links, and happy book collecting.
Yes.
Please let me know, do you consider yourself a book collector? What do you collect? Has this video inspired you to start a collection? If you're going to start one, how will you start? You're going to pick an author or a genre or a topic or one book? I'd really like to know
I'd
that.
Like to know
so
that
please
too.
let us all know, what do you collect? Because I am so interested to find that out. But thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.